Two people give you the exact same piece of advice. One says it with total certainty, no hesitation, no qualifiers. The other says it carefully, admits the limits of what they know, and hedges their answer. You will believe the confident one more, even when the honest one is right and the confident one is wrong. This is not a flaw in your character. It is a bug baked directly into how your brain evaluates trust. Think about the last time you sat in a meeting, a classroom, or even a casual conversation where two people disagreed. The person who spoke with total conviction, who never paused, who delivered their answer like it was obvious fact, probably won the room regardless of whether they were actually correct. Meanwhile, the person who said something like "it depends," or I'm not entirely sure, but here's what the data suggests, likely got less attention, even if their answer was more accurate. If you have ever walked away from a conversation more persuaded by tone than by substance, you are not gullible. You are running a mental shortcut that evolved for a very different world than the one you live in now. To understand why this happens, you need to understand what your brain is actually measuring when it decides who to trust. It is not measuring accuracy directly because accuracy is often impossible to verify in the moment. Instead, your brain relies on a proxy signal, something easier to observe that historically correlated with being right. No, confidence became that proxy because for most of human history, in small groups where people generally knew what they were talking about, confidence and competence were rough approximates of each other. Someone who had actually killed large animals before spoke about hunting with more certainty than someone who had not. Confidence was a reasonably useful signal when the stakes were tracking real first-hand experience. The problem is that confidence and competence are not causally linked. They are just historically correlated, and any trait that can be faked or overestimated eventually gets exploited by anyone motivated to do so, whether deliberately or unconsciously. This is where research by psychologist Don Moore becomes essential. Moore has spent much of his career studying overconfidence, and one of his most important findings is that confidence is frequently disconnected from actual ability, particularly among people who are the least skilled at a given task. Moore's research demonstrates that people with limited expertise in a domain are often the ones who express the highest levels of certainty, precisely because they lack the depth of knowledge required to recognize how much they do not know. Meanwhile, people with genuine deep expertise are frequently more aware of edge cases, exceptions, and nuance, which makes them more likely to hedge their answers not because they are less capable, but because they actually understand the complexity involved. This creates a deeply counterintuitive social dynamic. The people with the least reason to be certain are often the most certain, while the people with the most reason to be certain sound the most uncertain, and your brain, running on the ancient confidence is competence shortcut, reliably favors the wrong signal. This is the deep dive that reframes how trust actually works in your daily life. Confidence does not indicate correctness. It indicates something entirely different, how comfortable a person is projecting certainty regardless of whether that certainty is earned. Some of this comes from personality. Some of it comes from social training. And critically, some of it is a deliberate strategy, because confident delivery reliably produces social rewards independent of accuracy, which means confidence can be learned and performed by anyone, whether or not they actually know what they're talking about. This connects to research by social psychologist Cameron Anderson, who studies the relationship between confidence and social status. Anderson's research found that people who display high confidence are consistently granted higher social status and higher perceived competence by others, even when objective performance measures show no actual difference in ability. In some of Anderson's studies, participants who overestimated their own abilities and confidently projected that overestimation to a group were rated by their peers as more competent and were given more influence in group decisions despite performing no better, and in some cases performing worse than quieter, more accurate group members. Anderson's work reveals that confidence functions as a status signal independent of actual skill, meaning groups routinely hand decision-making power to the most confident voice in the room rather than the most correct one. And once that pattern is established, it becomes remarkably difficult to reverse because the confident person's status itself makes their future claims seem more credible by default, regardless of any track record of being wrong. Here is the counterintuitive twist that makes this even harder to catch in real time. Research by psychologist Elizabeth Tenney and her colleagues on confidence and credibility found that when someone is later proven wrong, their overall credibility with an audience often suffers less than you would expect, as long as they delivered their incorrect claim with confidence. Tenney's research demonstrated that confident communicators, even after being shown to be objectively mistaken, are frequently perceived as more trustworthy going forward than communicators who were accurate but expressed appropriate uncertainty from the start. In other words, confidence is not just rewarded before the outcome is known. It continues to be rewarded after the outcome proves the confident person wrong, because your brain associates the style of delivery with reliability more strongly than it tracks an actual accuracy record over time. This means the social cost of being confidently wrong is often smaller than the social cost of being honestly uncertain, which creates exactly the wrong incentive structure for anyone trying to build genuine trust through honesty rather than performance. So, what does this actually mean for you, someone who almost certainly considers your own judgment fairly reliable when evaluating who to trust? It means the instinct you feel when someone speaks with total certainty, the sense that they must know what they are talking about, is not tracking their actual knowledge. It is tracking their comfort with projecting certainty, a trait that has almost nothing to do with whether their information is correct. This does not mean every confident person is wrong, and it does not mean every hesitant person is right. It means confidence itself should never be treated as evidence, only as a delivery style that requires independent verification before you act on it. The practical shift here is to deliberately separate how something is said from what is actually being claimed. When someone speaks with strong certainty, the useful question is not does this sound convincing, but what specific evidence, track record, or reasoning supports this particular claim, independent of the tone used to deliver it. Actively noticing when a hedge, an admission of uncertainty, or a qualified answer appears, and treating that as a potential signal of deeper expertise rather than weaker conviction, helps correct for a bias your brain was never designed to catch on its own. And in group settings, deliberately asking quieter or more hedging voices what they think, rather than defaulting to whoever spoke first and loudest, can surface more accurate information that would otherwise be buried beneath performance. Two people can give you the exact same piece of advice, and you will believe the confident one more, even when they are wrong. This is not because you are careless or easily fooled. It is because your brain is running an ancient shortcut built for small groups and first-hand experience, applied to a modern world full of strangers who have learned exactly how that shortcut works and exactly how to use it. Now you know why the loudest voice in the room is so often mistaken for the correct one.